Hello, everybody, and welcome to McQueen Press, my YouTube channel. And I'm making this video to talk to you more about my latest work, which is the Cadis Evening. I gave some short details on two previous videos, but this goes a little bit more in depth into the actual writing. I'll show you the cover so you know what book I'm talking about. This is the Cadis Evening, and it's available on Amazon.com. It's $12.99. It's a suspense novel. It's about 260 pages, 30 chapters of suspense, and it follows the life and journey of a woman from the teen years up to about 40, and the trauma that she's a witness to concerning the destruction of her family. Um, there's a menace that kind of shadows her family, and it stems from what happened to her aunt. Um, let me move this down a little bit. I'm trying to read the summary. A woman who spent years running from a legacy of evil confronts the dark shadows that destroyed her family. And these dark shadows stem from without the family and then within the family as well. Stephanie Madison, a pariah to her family, launches a successful suicide attack against her employer, Cadis Industries. After Stephanie dies in the attack, the strange menace that stalks Stephanie's life now targets her niece, Marietta Brazil. Forced to flee the city of her birth, as well as her adopted home, Marietta finally draws a line in the sand to confront the corrupt forces that destroyed her family. But though she fights the evil outside, can she truly face the darkness within? So it is a dark story. It was not an easy story to write, but it was a story that I wanted to write, and I rose to the challenge because it was something. It was a story that I felt that I wanted to tell, since it deals a lot with the theme of forgiveness and of oneself and others, and then not allowing past mistakes to cripple a future. And so it's also about always having a place to call home too. Okay, so the writing for the Cadis Evening actually began in July of 2015. However, the idea of the Cadis Evening actually goes back to 2002 because it grew from a poem. The poem inspired a short story. The short story inspired a short screenplay, and then all of those different versions of the same story inspired the novel, The Cadis Evening. And so the actual writing of the novel itself did not begin until July of 2015. And fortunately, since it is based on the short story, chapters 2 through chapter 5 consist of the body of that short story, with a few details altered to fit into the novel. So the chapters 2 through 5 actually consist of the short story, The Confessions of the Dreamers. So that short story, The Confessions of the Dreamers, was originally written for Imaginarium, the short story collection, and that was 2006, I believe. It's been updated to match the rest of the events of the overall story, which is actually 30 chapters. So 27 chapters have been added. The novel is told from several perspectives, although it mostly concerns Marietta Brazil, who is the main character, and it's mostly her perspective. The novel, it's a suspense with some horror, mostly psychological horror mixed in, some thrills, but overall it's a suspense, psychological horror. And it actually it's told from Marietta's perspective from when she was a teenager or child, really, and what she witnesses when she's a teenager and how it changes in her mind as she gets older and she has more life experience. She begins to understand what she saw and what she heard and what it all meant. Um, because when she was a teen, she didn't have the maturity or the life experience to really comprehend what was happening all around her. And there's several deaths, some of which she's a witness to, and then some it happens off stage, and we just see the aftermath of the deaths that occur and the reaction of Marietta to the deaths. So, since she is a child when these events start occurring, and she doesn't really understand what's happening, although she understands enough that something is very wrong. She knows that much, but she just doesn't have the maturity to really understand what it is that's wrong. There's some elements of the fantastic to this story. There's no magic or any voodoo or any um, real fantasy, but there are elements of the fantastic, and I think it's because that's how she thinks of what happens in her life. She views it through a fantastic lens. It's so bright, it's so vivid to Marietta that that's the way she describes it for the reader in the story. So everything's brighter, everything pops, it's all realer than real. It's more fantastic than fantastic. And so I think that adds an element of excitement to the story as well. And so the reader does have to travel through Marietta's mind, her thought process, her level of understanding, her level of maturity. And so we endure with Marietta the pain, the anger, the sadness, the confusion that she feels towards her family and not understanding what they're saying, why they're saying it, why things are happening, um, things like that. And so as she matures, she slowly begins to face, because she does run away for a while. She decides, I'm just going to put all that behind me. I can't deal with it for many years. And then I think she gets to the age where she does want to face it. And so the second half of the book, the first half of the book is her witnessing a lot of crazy stuff and then deciding to run away from it and forget it. The second half of the book is when she decides that she doesn't want to run anymore, that she wants to face everything that occurred, that she's strong enough, she's mature enough, she has a life experience, that she's ready to get the answers. And so she does some detective work and some sleuthing, and it's hard on her. But can she handle the answers that she receives? And that's the second half of the book. So writing started July 2015, and a lot of it just consisted of me getting the chapter 2 through 5, which was the short story that already existed for years, starting with that, and then building around it, filling in different parts and maybe tweaking here and there to make it a full-length novel. So I did have that advantage. I had 3 chapters to start with, and then I just kept adding to it and kept adding to it. So I had those first 3 chapters, and then I had notes like this, little scraps of paper. I don't know if you can see that, where I just wrote down ideas and stuff. Things that I just wrote out like that. Basically trying to create additional chapters, or not create additional chapters, but to create additional characters that I needed to drive the story where I needed to go. And I'll answer this question because I know that it comes up a lot. There's usually 2 ways of writing a novel. One way is to just free flow write whatever comes in your head that happens next. So some people actually start a story, they don't know where it's going to go until they write it. Um, that's not me. My story is usually outlined. I know exactly how it ends. I know exactly what is going to happen chapter by chapter. And I just create the characters and the plot and the subplot that I need to drive the story to the conclusion that I want. And so that helps me. Everyone writes a different way, but I definitely always know how the story is going to end. Not precisely word for word, but I know what's going to happen. On some occasions, I'll create characters that are so strong, so very, very strong, so vivid, so crystal clear in their presence in the story that sometimes the characters will often themselves alter events based on who they are, what their mindset is, their background, their mode of thinking. So sometimes, often it's the characters that drive how the story is gonna end. Like I think when they're gonna all live happily ever after, and then I look at this character, I'm like, no, he's not gonna live happily ever after. He's not gonna make it past chapter 5. I don't think that's what's gonna happen. So anyway, it was a very dark story. It started in July 2015, and I wrote for 3 months, and then I actually had to put that story down for 3 additional months just to, because I could see even from the beginning of when I started to write that it was just driving to a very, very dark place. And I actually had to let the story go for about 3 months, and then I picked it up again, and it took me about 5 additional months to complete. So almost a year total to write, and well worth the effort. I'm very proud of the Cadis evening. It's got very full, rich characters, um, a pretty intriguing plot, some life lessons, and though it is again a very dark story, there's positive lessons to learn from it. Overall forgiveness, and mostly forgiveness of oneself, because the main character, Marietta, is not only a witness to some horrific events, in some aspects, she becomes a participant. And so that's part of the trauma that she undergoes along her journey towards self forgiveness. Anyway, so it took about 11, yes, 11 drafts that I printed out and scribbled across and slashed through, and I added additional pages that I wrote by hand where I wanted them to go. And I built up each character, and I did do a biography of each character, which also helped the story. All the main characters had their own biography. Sometimes it was just one paragraph, and then some of the biographies I wrote for each character were 2 pages. And by doing that, it became easier to let the characters drive the story forward. The dialogue became very, very easy. Some of the dialogue I already had in my head. I just had to find the right place in the story to insert the dialogue. And it's very fascinating the way the characters speak to each other. They reveal a lot about themselves, about the story, the plot of the story, and even about the listener as the listener responds in the dialogue to the main characters. So, hopefully that gives a little bit more insight into the writing process. And if you feel intrigued enough about Cadis Evening or the Cadis Evening, I hope you step on over to Amazon.com and see for yourself what you think. I hope it's a story that you enjoy. It was a story that it was not a pleasure to write, but it was a pleasure to finish writing. And I hope you feel the same once you've read it. And feel free to come back and tell me what you think. Oh, and to write a review. Okay, thank you.